Jake had been walking through the crystalline forest of Zephyr Prime for 2 days straight. The tall trees around him had trunks that looked like glass, and they made strange sounds when the wind blew through them. He was a salvage specialist, a man who searched for old technology and lost equipment across different planets. His job was dangerous and lonely, but it paid well enough to keep him moving from world to world. The forest was beautiful but also dangerous. Jake had his blaster, his medical kit, and a small water canteen attached to his belt. His boots were made for rough terrain, and they made crunching sounds on the crystal ground beneath his feet. He was following an old signal on his scanner, something that might be worth money if he could find it and bring it back to the colony. That was when he heard the sound. It was low and deep, like nothing Jake had ever heard before. It came from somewhere ahead beyond a thick cluster of crystal trees. Jake stopped walking and listened carefully. The sound came again, and this time it sounded like pain, like something was hurt and calling out for help. Jake knew better than to go towards strange sounds on alien worlds. He had been trained to avoid unknown creatures. His supervisor had told him 100 times to stay away from anything he could not identify, but something in that sound pulled at him. It did not sound like an animal attacking or hunting. It sounded like something suffering. He pushed through the crystal trees slowly, keeping his hand on his blaster just in case. The trees got thicker, and the light dimmed as he moved deeper into the forest. Then he saw it. The creature was massive, easily twice the size of a human. Its body was covered in silver fur that shimmered in the dim light. Jake could see bioluminescent markings running across its skin, glowing faint blue and green colors. The beast was lying on its side, and there was blood on the ground beneath it. Deep wounds cut across its back legs and side. Jake's first thought was to run. This was exactly the kind of thing he should avoid. The creature could attack him at any moment, but as he watched, the beast turned its massive head toward him and made that low sound again. This time, Jake could see the pain in the creature's eyes. The eyes were intelligent. That was what shocked Jake the most. These were not the eyes of a simple animal. They were eyes that understood. They were eyes that recognized pain and fear and the hope that help might be coming. Jake stood frozen for a long moment. He could turn around and walk away. He could go back to his salvage search and forget he ever heard this sound. No one would blame him. No one would ever know. But Jake could not make himself walk away. He moved slowly toward the creature, keeping his hands open and visible. He did not want the beast to think he was a threat. When he was about 10 feet away, he stopped and knelt down on one knee. He did not make any sudden movements. "Hey," Jake said quietly, "I am not going to hurt you. I am here to help." The creature watched him carefully. Its sides moved up and down as it breathed, and each breath seemed to cause pain. Jake could see the wounds more clearly now. The creature had been attacked by something with claws or teeth. The wounds looked at least a few days old, and they were infected. Without treatment, this beast would die. Jake slowly reached for his water canteen. He moved it very carefully, letting the creature see what he was doing. He poured some water into the cap and held it out toward the beast. The creature's nose twitched, and it tried to lift its head. The effort clearly caused pain, and it made a sound that was almost a whimper. "It is okay," Jake said. "Take your time." The creature managed to turn its massive head enough to drink from the cap. It drank slowly, carefully. When the cap was empty, Jake filled it again. The beast drank again, and this time its breathing seemed a little easier. Jake knew he needed to clean the wounds. He took his medical kit from his pack and opened it up. Inside were bandages, antiseptic spray, and other basic supplies. He did not know if these supplies would work on an alien creature, but he had to try. He moved closer to the beast very slowly. He spoke in calm, quiet tones the whole time, telling the creature that he was here to help, that he was not a threat. The creature watched him but did not attack. It seemed to understand that Jake was trying to help. The wounds were bad, much worse than Jake had thought when he first saw them. Infection had set in, and the tissue around the wounds was turning a sickly yellow color. Jake sprayed the antiseptic on the wounds carefully. The creature made sounds of pain but did not try to bite or attack him. It was as if the beast understood that this pain was necessary for survival. Jake worked for hours. He cleaned every wound, applied the antiseptic spray, and wrapped the worst of them with bandages from his kit. His supplies were running low by the time he finished, but the creature was looking better. Its breathing was more steady, and the pain in its eyes had lessened just a little. The sun was starting to set when Jake finally sat back and wiped the blood from his hands. The creature turned its head and looked at him. For a moment, the two of them just stared at each other. Then the beast made a sound, low and quiet. It sounded different from the sounds of pain it had made before. This sound was almost gentle, almost like a thank you. Jake knew he should leave. He should find shelter for the night and continue his search for the salvage signal. But he could not bring himself to leave the creature alone. He gathered some dry crystal branches and made a small fire not too far from where the beast lay. The creature watched him work, and when Jake settled down to rest, the beast seemed to relax a little too. Through the night, Jake kept the fire going and watched over the injured creature. Every few hours, he would get up and check the wounds to make sure they were not getting worse. He would give the beast more water, and the creature would drink gratefully. In the darkness, with the bioluminescent markings on the beast's body glowing softly, Jake thought about what he had done. He had broken every rule of his job. He had put himself in danger for an animal he did not know. He had used his medical supplies on a creature that might be worth nothing at all. His supervisor would be angry if he found out. But as Jake watched the creature breathe easier, as he saw the pain slowly leaving its eyes, he knew he had made the right choice. Some things mattered more than following rules or making money. Some things mattered because they were about life itself, about one living being helping another living being survive. When the sun came up the next morning, the creature tried to stand. It was slow and careful, and it clearly hurt, but the beast managed to get up on all four legs. It shook itself gently, then looked at Jake and made that low, gentle sound again. Jake smiled. He did not know what was going to happen next, but he knew one thing for certain. His life had just changed forever. 3 days had passed since Jake found the injured creature in the crystalline forest. 3 days of caring for the beast, cleaning its wounds, and watching as the infection slowly began to clear. Jake had given up on finding the salvage signal. That did not matter anymore. What mattered was making sure this creature lived. The beast was getting stronger. On the second day after Jake found it, the creature had eaten some of the nutrient paste from Jake's emergency rations. It did not look like the kind of food a creature like this would normally eat, but the beast was hungry, and it ate what Jake offered. By the third day, the creature was moving around more, still painful but moving. Jake had even figured out how to help support one of the injured back legs. He had taken a length of cord from his pack and fashioned a simple sling that helped distribute the creature's weight more evenly. It was not perfect, but it helped the beast move without as much pain. That was when Jake heard the sound of spacecraft engines. It started as a low hum in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Jake's heart sank. He had avoided human settlements on purpose. Encounters with colonial authority often went wrong for independent salvage workers like him. His license was legitimate enough, but questions would be asked about why he was here, why he was not working, and what he had been doing for 3 days in the middle of nowhere. The spacecraft came down through the crystal trees, and Jake could see it was not a military vessel. This was something much fancier, much more expensive. The shuttle was sleek and smooth, with markings that suggested official authority. It landed about 50 feet away from where Jake and the creature waited. The doors opened, and people began to emerge. The first was a woman wearing flowing robes that seemed to be embedded with threads that glowed with bioluminescent colors. These colors matched the markings on the creature's fur perfectly. Jake felt his stomach drop. This woman was clearly important, clearly wealthy, and clearly she knew something about the creature he had been caring for. Behind the woman came security personnel, armed and alert. Then came a medical team carrying equipment that looked far more advanced than anything Jake had in his simple kit. The woman walked forward slowly, and her eyes moved from the creature to Jake and back again. Her expression was hard to read. She was tall and moved with the kind of confidence that came from being used to people obeying her orders. The creature made a sound when it saw the woman, not a sound of pain, a sound of recognition. The beast struggled to its feet despite the injury, and it moved toward the woman with surprising grace given its condition. The woman knelt down and spoke to the creature in a language Jake did not understand. Her words were soft and quick, and the creature made those low, resonant sounds in response. They seemed to be having a conversation, and it was clear they knew each other well. Very well. After a moment, the woman stood up and turned to face Jake. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent. She was assessing him, trying to figure out exactly what he was and what he had been doing. "Where did you find Zephyr?" the woman asked. Her accent was slight but noticeable, and her common tongue was perfect. "I was exploring the forest to the south," Jake said. He decided honesty was his best chance. "I heard the creature making sounds of pain. I came to see what was wrong, and I found him like this. I did what I could to help." The woman studied Jake for a long moment. He could see her thinking, calculating something. Then she moved closer to the creature and examined the bandages Jake had applied. She looked at the cleaned wounds and the sling Jake had made. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes shifted. "What is your name?" the woman asked. "Jake, I'm a salvage specialist working in this sector." "I am Baroness Lyra," the woman said. "This creature you have treated so carefully is named Zephyr. Zephyr is my companion and my friend. Zephyr has been missing for 2 weeks. Jake felt his face go pale. A baroness. He was facing a baroness, and he had just spent 3 days treating her property. Or rather, what he had assumed was just an injured animal. He waited for her to be angry, to order her security personnel to take him into custody, to demand payment or punishment. "Zephyr wandered into forbidden territories," the Baroness continued. "I have been searching for him constantly. He was attacked by poachers about 2 weeks ago. They were trying to capture him to sell. Zephyr managed to escape, but he was badly wounded. He has been making his way back to me ever since." "I did not know he belonged to anyone," Jake said quickly. "I just saw something suffering and tried to help." The Baroness examined the bandages again. She spoke quietly to one of her medical team members, who moved closer to inspect Jake's work. The medical specialist looked at the wounds, checked the antiseptic that had been used, and turned to the Baroness and nodded. The specialist said something in a language Jake did not understand, but the Baroness's reaction told him it was good news. "Your treatment has saved his life," the Baroness said to Jake. "The wounds were severe. Without proper care within the first few days, Zephyr would have died. The infection you prevented would have been fatal." Jake did not know what to say. He had expected punishment or suspicion, not gratitude. "You are a salvage specialist," the Baroness said. "Your medical knowledge comes from emergency kits used in dangerous work. You should not know how to treat wounds this serious." "I learned basic medical care in my training," Jake said. "I figured that helping was better than doing nothing, and the creature seemed intelligent. I could see it in his eyes. I could not just walk away." The Baroness looked back at Zephyr. The creature was breathing easier now, and some of the pain had left its eyes. It stood on all 4 legs, even with the sling supporting the injured one. The beast was going to survive. "I want you to come to my estate," the Baroness said suddenly. "While Zephyr recovers fully, I want to speak with you. I want to understand what kind of human would abandon his work, use his own supplies, and risk his safety for a creature he did not know." Jake was surprised. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because," the Baroness said slowly, "actions like yours are rare in this galaxy. Most species calculate benefit and risk before they act. Most beings help only when there is something in it for them. But you helped Zephyr with no expectation of reward. You did it simply because Zephyr was suffering. The medical team moved in to take over the care of the creature. They had advanced equipment and proper supplies, and they worked quickly to assess and treat the remaining wounds. Zephyr seemed comfortable with them, and he allowed them to work without fear. The Baroness turned back to Jake. "You will come with me. You will see that Zephyr recovers properly, and you will tell me everything about yourself and about humans. I have a very important reason for wanting to understand you better." Jake knew he should be afraid, but looking at the Baroness, seeing her care for Zephyr, seeing how she valued what he had done, Jake felt something shift inside him. He had stepped into something much larger than himself. He had no idea where this would lead, but he knew his old life was over. The Baroness's estate was nothing like anything Jake had ever seen. The building was made of white stone that seemed to glow softly in the afternoon light. Gardens surrounded the estate, filled with plants from a dozen different worlds. Water fountains ran through the gardens, and there were open spaces where people could sit and think. Jake was given his own room in the guest quarters. The room was larger than the entire cabin of his salvage ship. There was a bed with real fabric sheets, a window that looked out over the gardens, and a washing area with hot water. Jake had spent most of his life in cramped quarters on ships and in colony settlements. This was like living in a dream. 3 days after arriving at the estate, Jake was invited to meet with the Baroness in her private study. The room was filled with books and data pads, and there were windows on 2 sides that looked out over the territories she ruled. The Baroness sat behind a desk made of dark wood, and she gestured for Jake to sit in the chair across from her. "Zephyr is recovering well," the Baroness said. "My medical team says he will be fully healed in 2 more weeks. The work you did almost certainly saved his life. Without your care, he would not have survived." "I was glad to help," Jake said. "I know you were," the Baroness replied. "That is exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. You helped Zephyr with no expectation of reward. You did not even know if helping would benefit you in any way. You simply saw something suffering and you acted. This is unusual behavior." Jake did not know how to respond to that. The Baroness stood up and walked to the window. She looked out over her territories, and when she spoke again, her voice was quieter. "Let me tell you about Zephyr. Zephyr is not just a pet or a companion animal. Zephyr is a... Do you know what that means?" "No," Jake said. "Are an intelligent species," the Baroness explained. "They have language, culture, history, and individual personalities. They form lifelong bonds with others, both with their own kind and sometimes with other species. Zephyr came to me when he was young, and we have been together for 20 years. He is not my property. He is my friend." She turned away from the window and looked directly at Jake. 20 years ago, I made a decision that changed my life. I chose to treat Zephyr as a being worthy of respect and love, not as a creature to be controlled or used. Many people in my position would have treated him as a status symbol or as a tool to be employed for their own purposes. I did not do that. I treated him as a friend, and he repaid that respect with loyalty and affection. The Baroness sat back down in her chair. 2 weeks ago, Zephyr wandered into territories controlled by poachers. These are people who hunt and other intelligent beings to sell them to people who want slaves or fighters for arenas. They attacked Zephyr with weapons designed to capture but not kill. Zephyr was wounded, but he was also smart enough to know he had to escape. He made his way back to me, but he was dying from his wounds and the infection that was growing inside him. "I do not understand what this has to do with me," Jake said. "Everything," the Baroness replied. "When my people found Zephyr, we began searching for him immediately. We have advanced technology, skilled trackers, and the authority to search anywhere in my territories. Yet we could not find him, not in 2 weeks, not until you found him." She leaned forward in her chair. What you did out there in that forest was important, but not because of Zephyr alone. What you did matters because of what it says about humans. You are a species that the leadership has been watching with great concern. The Baroness walked to a map on the wall. It showed the galaxy with different colored regions. She pointed to the blue areas. These are territories. We have advanced technology, long lives, and deep wisdom from thousands of years of civilization. We have watched your species for decades as you have reached out into the stars, and we have been afraid. Afraid of humans? Jake asked. Yes, the Baroness said. We have seen what other species do when they encounter beings they believe are less advanced than themselves. We have seen conquest, slavery, extinction. We believed that humans would do the same when they became strong enough. We thought you were a species that would take and take without ever giving anything back. She turned away from the map. But you proved us wrong. You found a creature that was not human, that might have been dangerous, and instead of thinking about profit or safety or advancement, you thought about compassion. You chose to help because helping was the right thing to do. I do not understand why this is so important, Jake said. Because it changes everything, the Baroness said. If we can find one human who sees another being in pain and chooses to help, then maybe there are more like you. Maybe humans are not the predators we feared. Maybe humans are capable of something that most advanced species have forgotten how to do. Maybe you are capable of choosing compassion even when it costs you something. She walked back to her desk and looked down at Jake. I want to propose something to you. I want to propose an alliance between humans and the people. An alliance based not on trade or technology, but on mutual respect and cooperation. An alliance that says we believe in each other's worth and dignity. Jake felt the weight of what she was saying press down on him. But this will be dangerous, the Baroness continued. There are who do not trust humans. There are humans who will see an alliance as a threat. There will be resistance from many sides. I need someone to help me make this work. Someone who understands both humans and someone who has already proven that they are willing to sacrifice personal safety and gain for what is right. You want me to help? Jake asked. Yes, the Baroness said. I need you to help me change the galaxy. I need you to help me prove that species can choose cooperation instead of conflict. I need you to be the bridge between our two peoples. Jake looked at the Baroness, and he saw in her eyes a determination that would not be. He had come to this planet looking for salvage and profit. Instead, he had found purpose. He had found something that mattered more than money or personal safety. I will help you, Jake said. The Baroness smiled, and she extended her hand across the desk. Jake stood and shook her hand, and he felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. In the gardens below, Zephyr stood on all four legs, his wounds healing, his strength returning. The creature had no idea how much his simple need for help had changed the fate of two entire species. But then again, maybe that was the point. Sometimes the most important changes came not from grand plans or powerful forces, but simply from one being choosing to help another. Jake had lived at the Baroness's estate for 3 weeks now. The crystal forest and the injured creature felt like a distant memory, though the events of those 3 days had changed his life completely. Zephyr was healing well, and the creature spent his days in the gardens, growing stronger with each passing week. But Jake was not spending his time simply watching Zephyr recover. The Baroness had begun to bring him into meetings and discussions about something far larger. She wanted to build an alliance between humans and she needed Jake's help to understand how humans thought and what might convince human leaders to accept such an arrangement. The Baroness had a library in her estate that was staggering in size. Thousands of books lined the walls, and they covered every subject imaginable: history, science, philosophy, politics, art, culture. The Baroness had invested her life in understanding different species and different ways of thinking. Every day, Jake would meet with the Baroness in her study or in one of the gardens. They would talk for hours about human nature, human history, and human values. The Baroness asked him countless questions. Why did humans help each other? Why did humans sometimes choose to do the right thing even when it cost them something? How did humans raise their young? What did humans value most in life? Jake found himself thinking deeply about questions he had never considered before. He told the Baroness about his childhood in a colony settlement, about his parents, and how they had taught him to care for others. He told her about his years working as a salvage specialist, about the dangers he had faced, and how he had learned to respect life in all its forms. Humans are different from most advanced species, the Baroness said one afternoon as they sat in the garden near where Zephyr rested. Most intelligent species develop technology and power becomes the most important thing to them. They measure success by the amount of control they have over their environment and other beings. Is that not natural? Jake asked. Perhaps, the Baroness replied, but humans seem to be built differently. Even in your own history, you had eras of terrible violence and conquest. Yet you also had times when humans chose mercy over revenge, when humans chose to help their enemies. This choice, the ability to choose compassion even when you have the power to do something else, this is rare. She looked at Zephyr, who was lying peacefully in the afternoon sun. I have studied many species, the Baroness continued. The developed wisdom and culture, the developed technology beyond imagining, the developed military might that has never been matched. But I have studied humans, and you are developing something else. You are developing the capacity to care about beings unlike yourselves. That is something truly unique. Over the weeks, Jake learned more about culture. He learned that lived for 300 years or more. He learned that they formed families that stayed together for decades, and that bonds between individuals were sacred to them. He learned that Zephyr was the child of a high, noble family, which made his survival and recovery even more important than Jake had realized. The Baroness also began to show Jake the political challenges that would come with proposing an alliance. She introduced him to advisors and officials, and they would discuss the obstacles they would face. The humans will be afraid, one advisor said during a meeting. They see us as advanced and therefore as a threat. They will assume we want something from them. And another official asked, will our people support an alliance with a species that is still so young, so violent, so unpredictable? They will need proof, the Baroness said. They will need to see that humans are worthy of trust. Jake realized that the answer to all their concerns sat in the gardens just outside the study. Zephyr was the proof. The creature was the living evidence of human compassion and human worth. 5 weeks after Jake arrived at the estate, Zephyr was fully healed. The creature's wounds had closed and his strength had returned. The Baroness decided it was time to move forward with her plan. She called a meeting with the leaders of the people. 3 representatives came to the estate, and they were clearly among the most powerful in existence. They wore robes of deep purple, and they moved with the kind of authority that came from centuries of leadership. The Baroness presented her proposal to them in formal language, but the message was clear. She wanted to establish an alliance with humans based on mutual respect and cooperation. She wanted the 2 species to work together toward a future of peace and shared prosperity. The leaders listened carefully, and Jake could see the doubt in their expressions. This was not something they had expected. This was not something they had trained for. But then the Baroness had them brought to the gardens where Zephyr waited. The creature knew the leaders. He made sounds of greeting, and the leaders responded in kind. They spoke to each other in the language, and their tones seemed warm and respectful. Then the Baroness brought them to meet Jake. This human found Zephyr wounded and dying, the Baroness explained. He had nothing to gain from helping my companion. He did not know who Zephyr was or what his value might be. He simply saw a living being in pain, and he chose to help. One of the leaders looked at Jake with intense eyes. You did this with no expectation of reward, the leader asked in careful, common tongue. Yes, Jake said simply. Why? The leader demanded. Jake thought about how to answer. He could have given a complicated response, but instead he chose the truth. Because Zephyr was suffering and I could help. That was reason enough. The leader turned to the other leaders and spoke in their own language. Jake could not understand the words, but he could hear the intensity in their voices. They were debating something, and the debate seemed important. Finally, the leader turned back to Jake. The Baroness wishes to build an alliance with your people. She believes that humans are different from other species. She believes that you are capable of compassion and cooperation. You are the proof she offers. I do not want to be proof of anything, Jake said. I just did what I thought was right. Exactly, the leader said. You did what was right, even when it cost you something. This is the kind of being we might trust. This is the kind of being we might build an alliance with. The leaders discussed more with the Baroness, and eventually they agreed. They would support the proposal for an alliance with humans. They would send representatives to human settlements to present this offer, but they wanted Jake to be part of that presentation. You will tell your people what you did, the leader said to Jake. You will tell them why you helped a creature you did not know. You will tell them that are worthy of respect and cooperation. You will be our bridge between the two species. Jake had never wanted to be a bridge between anything. He had never wanted to be important or to change the galaxy. But as he looked at Zephyr standing peacefully in the gardens, as he thought about the simple act of compassion that had led him to this moment, he knew that he could not refuse. I will help, Jake said. The leader made a sound that might have been approval or satisfaction. The agreement was made. The alliance would move forward, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. The human settlement of New Chicago sprawled across the plains like a collection of metal boxes stacked haphazardly on top of each other. It was not a beautiful place, but it was home to 30,000 humans who had left Earth and other colony worlds to build something new here on Zephyr Prime. Jake walked through the main street of New Chicago with the Baroness on one side and 3 leaders on the other. The settlement had never seen anything like this before. Not just aliens, but noble aliens who carried themselves with absolute authority and confidence. The wore formal robes, and their bioluminescent markings glowed softly in the afternoon light. People stopped and stared. Jake could see fear on many faces. Humans had limited experience with alien visitors, and these visitors were clearly powerful and important. The human governor of New Chicago had agreed to meet with the delegation, but Jake knew that many colonists were wondering if this was a threat. The council hall was filled with human leaders and officials. They sat in a semicircle facing the entrance, and they watched with careful eyes as the delegation entered. The Baroness and the leaders moved to the center of the hall with calm authority. People of New Chicago, the Baroness said, her voice clear and loud. I come to you with a proposal that will change your future and the future of all humanity. I come to propose an alliance between humans and an alliance based not on fear or control, but on mutual respect and cooperation. The room was silent. No one responded. Jake could see that the proposal was not being welcomed with enthusiasm. The governor of New Chicago stood up. His name was Reeves, and he was a careful man, not given to quick decisions. And what do we gain from such an alliance? He asked. What is it that need from humans? Nothing, one of the leaders said. His name was, and he was the highest ranking among the 3. We do not need your technology. We do not need your resources. We do not need your military strength. We need only your respect and your cooperation. And why should we give respect to beings we know nothing about? Another official asked from the council. The Baroness turned to Jake. Because of this man, his name is Jake. He is a human salvage specialist, and I want him to tell you his story. Jake felt his stomach drop. He had known this was coming, but the moment was still frightening. He stood up and walked to the center of the hall. All eyes were on him. All eyes were waiting. 2 months ago, Jake began, speaking clearly so that everyone could hear, I was exploring the crystal forests of this world. I was looking for salvage, for old technology, for things that might make me money. Then I heard a sound of pain coming from the forest. Jake told them everything. He told them about finding Zephyr, about the creature's injuries, about his decision to help despite the danger. He told them about cleaning the wounds, about staying through the night to care for the beast, about the understanding that grew between two very different creatures. I did not know that Zephyr was important, Jake said. I did not know that he belonged to anyone. I did not know that my actions would lead to meeting a Baroness or leaders. I simply knew that something was suffering and I could help. He paused and looked around the hall. What I learned from that experience is that compassion is the same in all beings. Whether you are human or whether you are born on Earth or on a distant world, when you see something suffering, you understand pain. When you see something dying, you understand the value of life. That is what makes us able to work together. That is what makes alliance possible. Jake sat back down and the hall was quiet for a long moment. Then the governor stood up again. "This story is moving," the governor said, "but stories are not policy. We need more than one human's act of kindness to base an alliance on." "Then let me show you something," the Baroness said. She gestured, and one of her attendants brought forward a data crystal. The crystal contained information about human history. It showed all the times that humans had chosen to help other beings, times when humans had risked their own safety for the benefit of others, times when humans had shown mercy to their enemies, times when humans had built bridges instead of walls. They also presented information about what an alliance would mean. Trade would increase, technology would be shared, defense would be coordinated. Both species would benefit, but more importantly, both species would be safer. "We have watched your species for many decades," said. "We were afraid of you. We believed that you would eventually threaten us. But we have also seen remarkable things in humans. We have seen humans protect their young with their lives. We have seen humans stay loyal to their companions even when it costs them everything. These are the qualities of a species worth trusting." The governor looked at his fellow officials. Some still seemed doubtful, but others were nodding. "We will need to put this to a vote," the governor said. "We will need to discuss this proposal with the other human settlements." "Of course," the Baroness agreed. "But I believe that when humans understand what we are offering, when they understand that see them as equals worthy of respect, many will wish to accept this alliance." The meeting ended, and the delegation was given quarters in the settlement. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake spoke to groups across New Chicago. He told his story again and again, and he saw something shift in people's eyes each time. They began to understand that this was not about fear or domination. This was about two species choosing to trust each other. Other settlements on Zephyr Prime voted to accept the alliance. Then settlements on other worlds voted to accept. Slowly, the alliance spread until it became official. Humans would work together, would help each other, would build a future based on mutual respect. A year after the formal alliance was signed, Jake was no longer a salvage specialist. He worked as an ambassador, helping human and communities understand each other. He traveled across the galaxy with Zephyr, and the creature had become a symbol of what was possible when species chose compassion over conflict. Zephyr walked with Jake through the streets of settlements on a dozen different worlds. Humans would stop and watch the two of them pass, and Jake could see in their eyes that they understood the story. They understood what Zephyr meant. One day, a young human girl approached Jake as he was sitting in a park. The girl was about 10 years old, and she was curious about Zephyr. "Is it true," the girl asked, "that you found him dying in the forest and you saved him?" "Yes," Jake said, "that is true." "My teacher told us that you did it because you thought it was right," the girl said, "even though it was dangerous and it did not give you anything." "That is true as well," Jake said. The girl looked at Zephyr, and the creature made a gentle sound and lowered its head so she could touch it. "That is very brave," the girl said. Jake smiled. He had not thought of it as bravery. He had simply done what felt right. But perhaps that was what bravery was, the willingness to help others even when there was nothing in it for you, the choice to see another being's pain and decide that their life mattered. Years passed, and the alliance between humans and grew stronger. Trade flourished. Technology was shared. Joint defense initiatives were established. But more importantly, humans learned to respect each other. They learned that species that seem different on the surface often share the same values and hopes. When Jake was old and his hair had turned gray, he would tell young humans entering the colonial service about that day in the crystal forest. They would ask him what made him help a dangerous creature when he could have walked away. They would ask him if he had known it would lead to an alliance and change the galaxy. Jake would always smile and shake his head. "I did not know any of that," he would say. "I only knew that something was suffering. I only knew that I could help. I only knew that helping was the right thing to do." And then he would look at Zephyr, older now but still strong, still carrying the marks of those old wounds that Jake had treated so many years ago. "That is what makes us human," Jake would say. "Not our technology or our strength or our intelligence. It is our choice to help those in need. It is our ability to see the pain of others and decide that their lives matter. That is what makes us worthy of the stars we have reached for." The young humans would listen, and they would understand. They would go out into the galaxy knowing that compassion was not weakness. Compassion was strength. Compassion was the thing that could change worlds. And all of it had started with one human finding an injured beast in a crystal forest and deciding that the beast's life was worth saving.